Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm the GM Philosopher, and today we're talking about crafting a starting point for your D&D game. Now, this topic was inspired by a question from Moonfall Mars. Gotta give a shout out to Moonfall, fantastic question. And basically they said, how can you make the start of an RPG game? Put your ideas in order to point A to point B, but how can you manage the chaos the players make in the middle points between the parts of the campaign? I really want to start a campaign with my friends, but I don't know how to actually start. Moonfall Mars, this is an awesome question. I love this question. I love that you want to start a campaign and get into playing some RPG games, TTRPGs, whether it be D&D or whatever it is you're planning to play. With that being said, I totally understand what you're saying. There's a lot of chaos that could come into it, and I'm going to share with you my 4 tips for exactly how to answer this question. Now, there's a lot of things you could do to start a game, but I'm just going to start with where I think the real answer to your question begins, which is point number 1, determine the world state and setting. So there are a couple decisions that you can make about this. You don't have to go super in depth. You can say, it's basically a high fantasy world. You could go online, get a map of Greyhawk and say, hey, we're going to play in Greyhawk. You could create a homebrew world. You could say, we're going to play in this part of my world. And sometimes you can really just start with a setting idea. So maybe it's like, I want to play in like an icy mountain range, or, my setting, I'm thinking about launching this campaign in a desert, like red, arid desert, or you might think, a lush jungle or tropical island, right? So it's like, you want to think of like the world state and setting you kind of want to play in. And then there would be probably some energy put into just very, very minimal investment in just kind of coming up with the world state, map details, the name of the village or city you're going to start playing, the basic situation going on there, right? Now, you do not have to flesh out an entire world. If you spend a few hours prepping for your first session and you come up with some basic answers to some of the most basic questions about your world state setting, this is generally enough to launch you and get you rolling. And then if you need more information as you go, you can either just be creative about it, or you could take a small recess and type up some stuff, right? A lot of times the problem with starting an RPG game and having it go off the rails from point A to point B isn't caused by like not fully fleshing out your world state or setting. It's actually caused by, as you said, player chaos. And the fact of the matter is that in TTRPGs, players have freedom to either follow your storyline or to follow a different storyline, or to even follow no storyline and just do things that their characters want to do. So there's a little bit of a motivation factor that might play into that. Sometimes you can discuss with your group kind of what kind of game they want to play, and you can kind of lay it out like that. However, I'm going to lead into point 2, and I think that my next 3 points are going to answer your question. By the way, if anyone has any advice for Moonfall Mars on this topic of crafting a starting point for your D&D game, please drop that in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going in the comment thread, and let's share as much value as possible to help answer this question for Moonfall Mars and anyone else who is dealing with it. Now, point number 2, to me, this is probably where the real start of your game really launches, and that's figure out your launching point, right? So for example, do you want to start the game like with your characters meeting up in a tavern? Or do you want to start your game with your players, characters just coming out of prison? Maybe you want to start your campaign where all of your players' characters have basically been summoned to jury duty, and so they're going to do that, right? Basically, you're looking at a launching point, an excuse to get the characters together, the beginning of a great adventure, and how we want to launch it. In my current campaign, the launching point was that all of the characters were refugees from a war-torn country that had just been invaded and conquered. And so they were on this little boat. They had basically all bought passage to be immigrants to another country, and they all met because they kind of had to band together in the bottom level of this boat, which was filled with sailors who were not very friendly, not very kind, trying to take advantage of them. Is like a very kind of dangerous immigrant refugee situation. And so these characters bonded together over the course of the journey, and we actually launched the game with them making landfall in their new destination. And so that was kind of the launching point that I used. And so you want to kind of just determine like your premise and launching point. And to me, this is often even more important than world state and setting. You want to figure out a little bit about your world state and setting, and if you do some prep work there, it'll help you. But figuring out your launching point is a pretty important part, and that's very creative. I think it's super fun to come up with launching point ideas. With that being said, if you do struggle with coming up with plot hooks on your own, I would encourage you to download my ultimate plot randomizer. It's an ebook. It's got 4 D100 tables in it, empowering you to roll plot hooks on the fly, either while you're prepping for a session or even in the middle of your game because your players have ruined all your plans. Download it, and you'll also be added to my email list. I send out emails 3 times a week. These emails are packed with tips. Sometimes they're packed with even user-created content, like stuff that awesome people I meet through my YouTube channel create and send me. And then I ask them and I share it with everyone on my email list. And that is so awesome. Basically, helping us to share resources as GMs. So it's all a win-win. Grab my ebook. With that being said, let's go into step number 3. Have a very, very rough idea of what you'd kind of like the players to do. And don't get too attached to it. And I'm going to explain what I mean. It is a good idea to have a basic idea of a plot line, and it does not have to be complicated. For me in my recent campaign, my big plot line was survive and make your way in Amaranthine City, which was the place they were going to as refugees. Now, I left it very open-ended. I was trying to kind of have it sandboxy. I wasn't really trying to put a lot of pressure on the characters to accomplish any particular goals. There was one main plot arc through the first quarter of the campaign, which was they got hired by the local guards to help investigate some magic murders. And so there was a little bit of detective work, a little bit of investigative work, and they were kind of unwittingly being used as bait because this murderer was targeting immigrants. And that's partly the reason why the local authorities chose them and enlisted their help, and they like paid them and gave them some stuff. But anyway, so that was like a plot arc that I gave them the option to follow. And they did end up following it because they really needed the money, really needed the items, really needed the support of the local guard, really helped them. And they did end up finishing that arc. And so that was pretty cool. And now they've kind of launched off to do other things. And I have other arcs kind of in motion. But here's the thing. You do want to have a very rough idea of what you'd like the players to do, but don't get too attached to it. And I'm going to tell you why. And this brings us to step number 4. Tip number 4. The players will be highly likely to abandon your plan altogether. Like, understand this. And that's totally fine. So have fun, improvise, create as you go, and don't sweat the small stuff. You have, a bit of power to help your characters get interested in the plot line that you envisioned. You can offer rewards. There could be payment for it. That might be how they level up and get XP. That might be the fastest, best way to obtain magic items or gold or whatever. However, I always love to give my players free agency. I always love to kind of say, hey, we're creating the story together. And guess what? If you come up with an arc that you want to pursue in the game with your characters that's better to you than the arc that maybe I had a premise for in the beginning, I'm here for it. I would totally love to explore that arc. Let's just go, right? Let's go. Let's do it. I'm excited. And I think that this is probably the best thing that I've ever done for my GMing to accommodate my most creative players and to collaborate with them the best. So I kind of want to say, don't worry too much about if the players completely deviate. What'll probably happen is you will, for good reason, set up a loose idea of kind of where you want your characters to go, point A, point B. Most likely your characters are going to veer wildly off course and go to point C or D or G or L, and that is totally fine. As long as you have fun and you roll with the punches a bit and you are willing to be creative and spontaneous and to do your best at improvising and to make sure that you continue to engage with your players in this collaborative storytelling adventure and to not take it too seriously. Like some GMs, and I used to do this, might take their stories a little bit too seriously, and this can hurt their experience. More than that, just think, I'm here to have fun. Are we throwing all of the plans out? Let's do it. I have no idea why the group chose to go hunt this troll, but I'm going to come up with a backstory for this troll. He's going to become the new BBEG. We are going to have an awesome troll hunting campaign. I was planning on climbing the local ruling class and establishing themselves as lords and ladies. But if we're going to be troll hunters, let's make this the most awesome troll hunting game there's ever been. And maybe while they're hunting trolls, they'll get distracted. They want to start a raven taming adventure and a circus, and they become a traveling circus. You know what? There are other traveling circuses, and those circuses are filled with a hidden guild of rogues who are going to try to steal their acts, steal their stuff, and there are going to be circus rogue wars, like guild wars. It's going to be crazy. I love to be creative and spontaneous, and I think I'll let the players set the tone for that. So don't worry. Don't stress out too much. My biggest piece of advice would be to kind of follow these 4 tips. Determine your world state and setting, figure out your launching point, have a rough idea of what you want your players to do, but then don't sweat the small stuff and be ready for them to veer off course, and know that that is totally fine. And that is how you will really come to have better practice as a GM. And honestly, that's probably when your campaign is going to get the best it's ever going to be. It's probably going to be the most fun when things are getting wild and you're thinking on your feet. So with that being said, I really would love for you to start your campaign with your friends and to give it a try. There is no such thing as a perfect GM. We all start somewhere, and you know what? We don't have to be perfect. We just have to have fun and create an engaging game and let players play their characters the way they want to, and we can be good to each other, be nice to each other, be respectful to each other, and you are bound to have an awesome time, and so are your players. So that would be my advice to you. Fantastic question. Thank you so much. Hey, everyone, give me a thumbs up and a subscribe. I'm here almost every day talking about the best game in the world, D&D, and every like, every subscribe, every comment helps to grow my channel. So thank you so much for contributing in that way. And with that being said, that's all I've got to say on this one. Have a great day, and I will see all of you fine people on the next one.